Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we are back with more news and politics from around the world for Saturday, the 24th of June. Now, we have the biggest story that's been going on was more than likely the Wagner group turning on Russia. And I've got a number of stories pulled up here. Putin urgently leaves Moscow for bunker in Valdai. We got another story. Putin made wrong choice. Russia will have new president soon, says Wagner Group. Wagner chief says he ordered his Russian mercenaries to halt march on Moscow. Flights leaving Moscow sell out as Wagner troops descend. And then we even have Wagner chief Prigozhin says he's accepted truce brokered by Belarus. So yeah, that is immense. Like I said, there was a march going into Russia by the Wagner military mercenaries, but there's been a truce brokered by Belarus, a country, one of the satellite countries of Russia that's still on good terms with it. So, things have been calmed. But, yeah, Russia just come to the table and talk peace. If there are other leaders preventing it, you all need your heads kicked in. Honestly. There should always be an attempt to obtain peace. But yeah, it's kind of been the big news. Wagner marching on Russia. We got another story. This is in the political realm. House Freedom Caucus weighs kicking out Marjorie Taylor-Greene. See what this is about here. House Freedom Caucus. This is from Axios. Members of the House Freedom Caucus discussed potentially ousting Representative Marjorie Taylor-Greene from the conservative group during a closed-door meeting on Friday morning. Three sources familiar with the conversation confirmed to Axios. The discussion comes after the wake of Greene taking aim at Lauren Boebert on the House floor when Greene called the Colorado Republican a nasty little bitch after Boebert introduced competing impeachment resolutions. Two sources say they felt Greene's behavior was unprofessional, with one critic arguing that members are becoming increasingly frustrated with the Georgia conservative for a variety of reasons. No decisions were made, but they said they've had a wide-ranging discussion on a number of topics. Three GOP lawmakers cast doubt that an ouster would actually take place, noting that the long-standing members have reservations about the move and a removal would require an 80% majority. That's what you get when you politic in the land of hate and stupidity, that's your own fault. Trump claims he doesn't want any help fighting federal indictment after he struggled to find attorneys willing to represent him. So he's being a petulant little baby. I don't need any help. I don't want any help in campaigns, Trump said. Oh, goodness. He told a crowd at his Bedminster Golf Club in New Jersey that he doesn't need any help fighting his numerous legal battles and that he has actively rejected major law firms offering him assistance. He made his comments on Thursday night, according to Mediaite. 2 of Trump's top lawyers have already resigned from his defense team after the DOJ announced it was bringing 37 charges against the former president. He's going to end up getting himself put in jail. Just because he's so egotistical. This is another story. 3 San Antonio officers charged with murder after gunning down a woman inside her apartment.
You're gonna get shot!
Shoot me!
Shoot me.
You ain't got no warrant!
Hold on.
You ain't got no warrant!
Let's go. Move. Go. Get him. Hey, watch out.
Really?
Hey!
Back up!
Back up. She's more than likely unarmed.
Hold on.
You ain't got no warrant!
Let's go. Go. Hey, watch out.
They're just so willing to completely unload their guns
Back up!
into somebody. And honestly, those guns need to be taken away from their asses. Anyway, this is another video here.
It sounded to me like someone told you to say things and you don't. I said, it sounds like a psyop to have this profile appear one day after the shooting where it's got like a bunch of screenshots on it or something.
Sure.
It really does sound to me like someone told you to say things and you don't know what you're referencing.
I'm not shocked that that is the only way that you're going to try to react to this.
To react to what? Okay, no, this is fairly obvious. So I'm willing to bet Sam was like, hey, ask him about this and say these exact things.
No, I came up with,
Come up with original thoughts. Come on.
It is my original thought.
So
No, it isn't.
It's
some guy posts a screenshot of one episode of a show he's not subscribed to, and you think that's an attack vector for something political, but it's a personal snipe that has no bearing on any of the arguments we've made the entire show.
I disagree.
Yes.
You disagree with what? With what? Elaborate.
I disagree that it has no bearing on what you've said throughout your entire show.
Like what? What did I say?
This was
Come on.
the claim
Let's
that you
hear
made.
it. Let's hear it.
I believe that your program appeals to a right-wing audience.
You can see how upset he is. Come on! Yeah, sure, that's what you did. It's like he has no sense for her to speak, calmly and peacefully. He's like, no, fuck you.
And there's a reason that the neo-Nazi shooter watched your program.
And how do you know he watched the program?
Because he posted about it.
What did he post?
Tim.
What did he post?
He posted parts of an interview that you did.
No, he didn't. You're wrong.
He had 4 screenshots on his phone from
You
the
don't
same
even know what
episode.
you're talking about, and all you can do is laugh and say...
No, it's because you get
some
specific
guy,
to obscure
Some
the fact.
guy
You called it
posted
a
one thing one time, and that's the only argument you have.
Did you go to the time codes that were in that episode? Because I did. I ran this down, and one of them was a clip of Elijah Schaffer, and like weirdly for this like neo-Nazi Hispanic shooter, he like it's Elijah saying that we shouldn't be
He had a
emphasizing
swastika
race
tattoo.
specifically. No, he's a neo-Nazi Hispanic shooter.
Right, but Tim called it a false flag and then corrected himself the next day and then said he thought it was funny after a mass shooting.
I think that
I mean, people
someone
were calling
told you
him-
to say this and you don't actually know what you're talking about.
I think that it's not shocking that you think that based on my gender.
Okay, you're not saying anything anymore.
But like
Got scientific research, data, my position on what I like about DeSantis, and then you go, your show's for neo-Nazis. It's like, okay, dude, are you stupid?
I'm just stating facts.
Yeah, Tim was just so chicken he didn't want Emma to have a chance to actually speak properly. He was like, no, he sounds like a Ben Shapiro at that point, trying to spew off all the crap. But yeah, this is from The Lever. Alito could deliver another ruling for billionaire benefactor. Hedge fund of GOP mogul who funded luxury trip is trying to kill financial regulations. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito and billionaire hedge fund manager Paul Singer. The hedge fund of Justice Samuel Alito's billionaire benefactor has been using a recent Alito-backed Supreme Court ruling to try to pressure federal regulators to back off new financial rules designed to fight fraud, according to documents reviewed by The Lever. The hedge fund, Elliott Management, has been arguing that the rules are unconstitutional and could ultimately try to bring a case before Alito to strike down the new regulations if they are enacted. The High Court is currently considering a petition to hear a separate case involving the same firm. ProPublica this week reported that Elliott Management President, founder, and co-CEO Paul Singer provided an undisclosed private jet to Alito and has been a major donor to the Judicial Crisis Network, a dark money group that has funded campaigns to install conservative judges throughout the judiciary, including Alito. The justice has declined to recuse himself in past cases involving the hedge fund. Elliott's efforts to weaponize a recent Supreme Court case to block anti-fraud rules and to potentially use the High Court to kill them spotlights how judges are in key positions to help billionaires who provide them with gifts and other largesse. Why are they always in such a hurry to kill regulations, to deregulate? Because they know it's there for safety, but it eats away at a little bit of money they could earn. You know, regulations could have saved the idiots in the Titanic submersible, but they didn't want to have to take the time to follow regulations to make sure it was safe. Nah, fuck that, fire you. And they're dead. You know, the crash in Ohio, oh, they could have had regulations and fixed the brakes and stuff of the trains, but the train lobby pushed against it. Yeah. you always have to question when deregulation is something an individual wants. Especially if they are millionaires and billionaires. And honestly, Alito, Thomas, all the judges should be put before a congressional panel and see what they have picked up, because it's coming out, oh, these are corrupt fuckheads. But yeah, let's look at ProPublica. Department of Transportation researchers suggested a way to make big trucks safer. After meeting with lobbyists, agency officials rejected the idea. See? This is the same thing. Oh, we could do things better. No, we don't like regulations. That makes us have to spend money. Fuck you. Okay. The Department of Transportation allowed trucking lobbyists to review an unpublished report recommending a safety device that could save lives by preventing pedestrians and cyclists from getting crushed under large trucks. America's Dangerous Trucks is part of a collaborative investigation from Frontline and ProPublica. The documentary premiered on June 13, 2023. In 2017, researchers at the U.S. Department of Transportation embarked on a project aimed at making America's roads less dangerous. They were concerned over the rising number of pedestrians and cyclists killed in collisions with trucks, which claim the lives of several hundred people every year. Oh, the humanity. The research decided to focus on a safety device called a side guard, which is designed to reduce the hazards posed by large commercial trucks. Made of plastic, aluminum, or steel, the guards hang between the truck's front and wheel guards, preventing pedestrians and cyclists from tumbling beneath the vehicles and getting crushed. The guards are required on trucks in dozens of countries, but they aren't in wide use in the U.S. Because why? That money, baby! It's all that money! When the researchers drafted their report, they included a key suggestion. The Department of Transportation should craft federal regulation requiring side guards. Duh. Yeah. See, it's just something from causing them to end up underneath. But, nah, that's money. That costs them money to implement. And so they're like, nah, fuck that. But, the recommendation generated intense resistance, both internally from department officials who challenged their findings, and externally from trucking industry lobbyists. Well, what you do is put a law into place and put the fine far higher, so that their asses are like, we gotta do it if we don't want to end up paying much more. But no, they're cheap fucks. Fuck lobbyists. the industries. Anyway, organ transplant patients can die when donors aren't screened for this parasitic disease. Bob Nadele died after receiving a heart from a donor with Chagas disease. His death could have been prevented if the donor had been tested. The group that governs U.S. transplant policies is considering mandatory screening of at-risk donors. When a ringing phone woke him on his 64th birthday, the caller offered the best gift imaginable. Newark Beth Israel Medical Center had a heart for him. A heart attack had left Natally, a former police detective, with grave cardiac damage, and he had spent the last 2.5 years on the transplant waiting list. His family usually celebrated birthdays with dinner and a cake, but on that day, in May of 2018, Bob and his wife of 43 years, Cheryl, instead started calling their children to let them know that they were heading to the hospital. The cake would have to wait. He went into surgery and received his new heart shortly after midnight. At first, his recovery seemed to go well. According to his wife, he returned home after 3 weeks and initially had more energy than before. It seemed as though their long-time dream of traveling across the country in an RV to visit national parks might be within reach. But the 9 weeks after his transplant, he got a fever and his hands began shaking with tremors. He returned to Newark Beth Israel. Doctors ran test after test but were unable to find the cause. After he spent more than a month in the hospital, doctors discharged him, but he continued to decline. He fell and I had to get the neighbors to help get him back into bed. Cheryl recalled, I had to put him in a wheelchair to get him to the bathroom. He deteriorated so quickly that his wife had to call an ambulance. This time he went to Yale New Haven Hospital, which was close to their home in Connecticut. By the next day, doctors in Yale's intensive care unit found the culprit. The heart he had received had been infected with a parasite that causes Chagas disease. He was basically filled with parasites, recalled Dr. Tariq Ahmad, chief of heart failure at Yale Cardiology. The organisms had multiplied in his heart and invaded his nervous system and brain. For 12 long weeks, the doctors at Yale tried to purge the parasites, but this was difficult with a patient who needed to be on immunosuppressants to prevent his body from rejecting the new heart. That sucks. Damage to his nervous system made him hypersensitive, Cheryl recalled. Doctors incubated him after he developed pneumonia, and every time the nurses suctioned his tube to clear secretions, his wife walked out of the room so she wouldn't have to hear her husband screaming. Finally, Bob told her that he couldn't bear the pain anymore, so they discontinued treatment. Her high school sweetheart passed away 7 months later after that hopeful call about the heart that was waiting for him. His death could have been prevented if the donor had been screened for Chagas. So yeah. Chagas disease is caused by a parasite called T. cruzi, which is transmitted when insects and found mainly in rural areas in Central America, found mainly in rural areas of Central America, South America, and Mexico. Though cases of Chagas in the United States are rare, the parasite has been a known risk for transplant recipients for decades. Since at least 2001, case studies have detailed how U.S. patients have died after receiving infected organs. For years, experts have recommended that transplant networks screen donors who were born in countries where the parasite is endemic. A 2011 working group of transplant infectious disease specialists and representatives from the U.S. Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, and these donors should be tested. And so did the American Society of Transplantation in 2019. The infected patients can appear healthy for years, and some never develop symptoms, so it's not obvious they harbor the parasites. Yet, despite expert recommendations, the U.S. does not require that organ donors be screened for Chagas. Again, regulation would cost money. Regulations are there for a reason. To prevent things like this from happening. And finally, we are ending with a picture of a Blair Mountain miner with his rifle slung over his shoulder in 1921. Now, the reason this is huge, there was the Blair Mountain miners who ended up having to fight Battle of Blair Mountain, the largest labor uprising in U.S. history and the largest armed uprising since the American Civil War. The conflict occurred in Logan County, West Virginia, as part of the Co-Wars, a series of early 20th century labor disputes in Appalachia. Up to 100 people were killed and many more arrested. This was just over 100 years ago, people. But yeah, Logan County is also where part of the Hatfield-McCoy feud took place on the West Virginia-Kentucky border. But yeah, and they give a article about the Battle of Blair Mountain. Like I said, it's a huge moment. These miners basically had a labor dispute with the mines, who owned big money and had hired, oh goodness, it was mercenary detective, Pinkertons, I think it was. But yeah. The West Virginia mine wars culminated in a massive march of Union miners through the towns of southern counties. The participants ultimately sought to free miners in Mingo County who had been arrested and were being held in jail on charges of violating the martial law that the governor had imposed on the county. To get to Mingo, they first had to cross through Logan County. It's, like I said, one of the southernmost counties in West Virginia, borders Kentucky. In late August 1921, the Union miners encamped in the town of Blair, just below Blair Mountain in Logan County. Blair Mountain forms a long ridge line that the miners had to cross in order to reach Mingo County. Their first order of business was to deal with Don Chafin, the notorious sheriff of Logan County, whose main job was to protect the coal mine operators' interests. So, yeah, the police, the sheriff, who they work for? Not the average person. They're protecting the rich. By the time the armed marchers arrived in Blair, Chafin had assembled his own army of civilian recruits that were protecting positions along the Blair Mountain ridgeline. It was on Blair Mountain where the two forces would come face to face. On the night of August the 30th, John Wilburn, a minister and part-time miner, led a group of 70 miners, including two of his sons, up the mountain. During a dawn patrol, Wilburn and four other men encountered three of Chafin's deputy sheriffs, including John Gore, an infamous mine guard in Logan County, in a gun battle. In the gun battle that ensued, the miners shot and wounded Gore, who then shot and killed miner Eli Kemp. Wilburn responded by shooting Gore in the head, ensuring that he was dead. This marked the beginning of the Battle of Blair Mountain. For the next 3 days, the two sides battled with Gatling guns and other firearms along the ridge of Blair Mountain. During the second day of fighting, Chafin ordered his men to fly airplanes over the encamped marchers and dropped 2 nausea-inducing gas bombs and 2 bombs filled with gunpowder, nuts, and bolts. As historian James Green describes it in The Devil is Here in These Hills, West Virginia's coal miners and their battle for freedom, something extraordinary happened in Spruce Fork Ridge that day. American citizens were being subjected to aerial bombardment on their own soil. This is why I say, back the miners. Don't back coal in the mines. Just back the miners. There's a difference. But some people in this area just don't see it that way. After several days of heavy fighting along the mountain ridge, the miners were ready to move into Logan County, where the federal government stepped in, dispatching troops, planes, and munitions to the area. This intervention effectively ended the miners' march before they could enter into full battle with Chapin's army. The miners willingly surrendered to the federal troops because they were not rebelling against the federal government, but rather the local and state governments that catered to mining interests to the extent of denying citizens their constitutional rights. In fact, miners viewed the intervention of the military as a victory, seeing it as a signal that the rule of law would return to the region, even though they did not succeed in freeing the jailed miners in Mingo or ridding Logan County of its corrupt sheriff. The fighting of the West Virginia mine wars officially ended September 4th, 1921. Due to the size, length, and violence involved, the legacy of this short battle has loomed large in American labor history and continues to be a symbol of workers' struggle in the past, many of which continue to resonate today. Yeah, because we're essentially back in the same situation because they've allowed the rich and corporations to take back over and have power far in excess of what they should. Because some people are like, I could make money if I do things for my rich boss. Yes, boss, let me lick your asshole. The Blair Mountain Battle site is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The NRHP is the official list of the nation's historic places worthy of preservation. Authorized by the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, the National Register of Historic Places is part of the national program to coordinate and support public and private efforts to identify, evaluate, and protect America's historic and archaeological resources. But yeah, I figured I'd end with that. Like I said, Battle of Blair Mountain, big moment. And yeah, that's a picture from one of the miners who had his rifle on his shoulder ready to go into battle. Yeah. But I'll go ahead and end this episode here. Thank you all for watching. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tries to tell you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting sources in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, later.